you should have a picture in your mind of what your answer looks like. We did number one already. We wrote the formula, we did the substitution, we had the proper units. Well, what does 39.6 meters squared look like? Well, how big's a meter? Is that like a yardstick? A little bit more? So what we're talking about, we actually drew it, that's a square meter. So it would take about 40 of those to fill up the object. Is this object drawn to scale? No, it's a giant rectangle. Also have a picture in your mind of what you're accomplishing. You are covering the figure with squares. So since this is 3 meters, I'll put 3 rows. This is not drawn to scale, so it's not going to look like squares, it'll look like rectangles. Something like that. That's what you should have in your mind. Picture putting what's called a net over the figure. It would take about 39.6 of these squares to fill up the object. Doesn't matter what the shape of the object is, the units that we're using are always squares. I think of postage stamps. I think of the floor. The tiles on the floor are feet squared. Number 2, raise your hand, tell me what I'm looking at, and tell me what formula I should use for the area. Rachel. Parallelogram, and what is our area formula? Base times height. Let's show the substitution. What's our base? 36. What's our height? 75. We want the height to be at a right angle to the base. You are going to be given extraneous information. Are we using the 90 at all? No. Not everything that's there is going to be used. What'd you get for, I have 2,700, does that sound correct? 2,700 what? Centimeters squared. Let's put that down here in our answer blank. Have a picture of what's going on. How big is a centimeter square? Much smaller than our meters squared. So even though this number is bigger, this area of 39.6 meters squared is actually a larger area because it covers more space. Units are important. Number 3, we are looking at a triangle. Raise your hand. Tell me what you wrote down for the area formula for the triangle. What do you got down, Justin?
442
What formula?
feet squared.
Formula. The first line.
A equals 1/2 base over height. Base times height.
Is that what appears on this formula sheet? 1/2 base times height. Do you have to think of it in that order? Couldn't I do this? Isn't that the same exact thing? So don't get bogged down with having to separate the fraction out of the formula. Sometimes that can run into trouble when you have a repeating decimal, like for 1/3, 2/3. So my advice is whatever the formula is on your formula sheet, if there's a fraction involved, push the fraction into the formula. Push that 1/2 into the formula. Now you don't really have to deal with a fraction, you're dealing with division instead. You multiply the top, divide by 2. If I use that, then my base is 52, my height is 17. I'm getting, from JD's paper, 442. Does that sound right? 442, what units? Feet squared. Look at the floor. You're looking at the units for this problem. We take 442 of these tiles to cover this triangle. 442 feet squared. Have a visualization of what it is that you're doing when you get your answers. It's not just a number. It's a thing. It's a square in this case. This is the same formula as number 3. We've got area equal to base times height over 2. What is my base? Chloe? 17. I only want the actual distance of whatever I'm calling the base. So that's 17. What's the height of this object? Which distance is connected to the base with a right angle? 6. Am I using the 3? The 3 is there to throw you off. We don't want to include the 3 because we don't want to find the area of this empty space out here. We want the area of the triangle interior. This is equal to, I'm getting 51 inches squared here. Does that sound right? 51 inches squared. Visualize. If it's an inch squared, I'm thinking of a postage stamp. It would take 51 stamps to cover up this triangle. Last one, what are we looking at? If I've got this parallel to this, this is a trapezoid. The formula that I'm seeing here is 1/2 h b1 plus b2. We've got what's considered two bases, b1, b2. The parallel parts are considered the bases. What's considered the height in this case? 35. That's the h. That's at a right angle with the base. 42, just there to throw you off. You don't need that information, or it just happens to be there. I'll go ahead and do this. I can change 1/2 into 0.5. I can put in 35 for the height. I can put in 38.73 here. I can multiply all that out and get 1,942.5 centimeters squared. Can we confirm that? Does that look correct? Let's put something different over here. You've got a little more space. What's the first two letters in the word trapezoid?
Trap.
First two letters.
Oh.
TR. That's because it's based on triangles. I could put a diagonal in here, and then I'd have two different triangles. What's the formula for a triangle? 1/2 base times height. This formula is just taking two triangle formulas and pushing them together. Because I could write it this way. I could write it with the B1 and the B2 first, then the height second. Doesn't that look a little bit more like our triangle formula? And then I could separate that out into 1/2 B1 times h plus 1/2 B2 times h. That's what the actual formula is. You're finding the area of that plus the area of this. So as we go through this, we're using formulas, but sometimes the formulas are condensed versions of longer formulas that you could deduce on your own. If you knew that this was two triangles, you would probably separate it into two triangle formulas. And sometimes you'll have to do that. You'll be doing homework out of your workbook that might involve figures that need to be broken down into pieces. Maybe you have to break something down into a rectangle, a square, and a triangle, and individualize your areas and then add them up. We don't need to do this because we've got our nice formula. It's on our formula sheet. All I need to do is substitute, but realize where it's coming from. This is actually a condensed version of two area formulas from a triangle. Put that into your new section called surface area and volume.